Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The heavy manila envelope sat on Graham's desk, innocuous, yet filled with thrilling potential. He glanced around the empty office, heart racing as he carefully slit open the package. Inside lay a sleek black corset, its satin material gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Graham's hands trembled as he lifted the garment, marveling at its sturdy boning and delicate lace trim. He had agonized for weeks before working up the courage to order it online, terrified someone would discover his secret. But now that it was here, a wave of excitement washed over him. Locking his office door, Graham shed his conservative gray suit jacket and crisp white shirt. He held the corset up to his chest, imagining how it would look. Taking a deep breath, he wrapped it around his torso and began fastening the hooks with shaking fingers. As he tightened the laces, Graham felt a profound shift. The rigid material compressed his midsection. For the first time in his 45 years, Graham felt truly comfortable in his own skin. A knock at the door startled him from his reverie.
"Graham, you in there?"
It was his coworker, Steve.
"Just a minute,"
Graham called, hastily unlacing the corset and stuffing it back in the envelope. He threw on his shirt and jacket, smoothing his thinning hair. When he opened the door, Steve gave him an odd look.
"You okay? Your face is all flushed."
Fine, Graham said quickly. Just, doing some stretches. You know how sitting at a desk all day can be." Steve shrugged.
"If you say so. Anyway, the Henderson account files are ready for your review."
Graham nodded, forcing himself to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting back to the corset hidden in his desk drawer. He couldn't wait to get home and try it on properly. That evening, Graham raced through his usual routines, microwaving a frozen dinner and half-heartedly skimming the newspaper. As soon as the sun began to set, he retrieved the corset from his briefcase with trembling hands. In the privacy of his bedroom, he wrapped the corset around his torso, this time taking care to position it properly. Slowly, methodically, he tightened the laces, relishing each incremental change in his silhouette. When he finally turned to face the mirror, Graham's breath caught in his throat. The corset hugged his waist, creating a subtle hourglass shape. He ran his hands over the smooth material, marveling at how different he looked, how different he felt. For the first time in years, Graham smiled at his reflection. He struck a pose, one hand on his hip, and was amazed at how natural it felt. In that moment, a lifetime of discomfort and unease began to make sense. This was who he was meant to be. Over the next few weeks, Graham's corset became his most treasured possession. He wore it under his work clothes, reveling in his secret all day long. At night, he experimented with different outfits, ordering dresses and skirts online and having them delivered to a P.O. box. As he explored this new side of himself, Graham realized he needed a new name to match his emerging identity. After much consideration, he settled on Bonnie. It felt right, feminine and pretty, yet with a hint of playfulness. Bonnie began spending more time at home, afraid someone might notice the changes if she went out. She practiced walking in heels, perfected her makeup technique, and even started growing out her hair. With each passing day, she felt more and more like her true self. But living a double life was taking its toll. At work, Graham struggled to maintain his old persona, constantly worried someone would see through the facade. He began calling in sick more often, using any excuse to stay home where he could be Bonnie. Finally, after months of internal debate, Bonnie decided it was time to come out. She started with her closest friend, Maria, inviting her over for coffee one Saturday afternoon. When Maria arrived, Bonnie answered the door in a modest floral dress, her face carefully made up. Maria's eyes widened in shock. "Graham?" she gasped. "What's going on?" Bonnie took a deep breath. "Actually, I go by Bonnie now. Please come in. I have a lot to explain." Over the next hour, Bonnie poured out her heart to Maria, describing her lifelong struggle with gender identity and the joy she'd found in embracing her true self. To her immense relief, Maria listened with compassion and understanding. "I'm so proud of you," Maria said, squeezing Bonnie's hand. "It must have taken incredible courage to tell me this. Thank you for trusting me." Tears welled up in Bonnie's eyes. "You have no idea how much your support means to me." Emboldened by Maria's acceptance, Bonnie began coming out to other friends and family members. While not everyone was immediately understanding, she was surprised by how many people rallied around her. Her sister, after some initial confusion, became one of her strongest advocates. The workplace, however, presented a bigger challenge. Bonnie knew she couldn't keep living a double life, but she was terrified of losing her job. After much deliberation, she decided to speak with her boss, Mr. Hendricks.
"Come in, Graham,"
Mr. Hendricks called when Bonnie knocked on his office door. She entered, heart pounding. "Sir, I need to talk to you about something important," Bonnie began, her voice shaking slightly. I'm transgender. I've been transitioning, and I can't keep hiding who I am at work." Mr. Hendricks was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke.
"I see. And how would you like us to address you moving forward?"
Bonnie blinked, surprised by the calm response. "Bonnie, sir! And I use she, her pronouns now." Mr. Hendricks nodded.
"All right, Bonnie. I won't pretend I understand everything about this, but you're a valuable employee. We'll work together to make this transition as smooth as possible."
Overwhelmed with relief, Bonnie felt tears welling up. "Thank you, sir. You have no idea how much this means to me." In the following weeks, Bonnie worked with HR to develop a transition plan for the workplace. They sent out a company-wide email explaining the situation and outlining expectations for treating Bonnie with respect. While there were a few awkward moments and confused looks, most of her coworkers were supportive. As Bonnie settled into her new life, she found herself blossoming in ways she never expected. She joined a support group for transgender individuals, where she made new friends who understood her journey. She started volunteering at a local women's shelter, finding purpose in helping others. One day, about a year after her transition, Bonnie was having lunch with Maria when her friend made an observation. "You know, Bonnie," Maria said, "I don't think I've ever seen you this happy. You're practically glowing." Bonnie smiled, realizing the truth in Maria's words. "I am happy," she replied. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm truly myself. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been so worth it." Maria raised her glass in a toast. "To being yourself, no matter what anyone else thinks." Bonnie clinked her glass against Maria's, feeling a surge of gratitude for her friend's unwavering support. As they continued their lunch, chatting and laughing, Bonnie marveled at how far she'd come. From that first secret purchase of a corset to openly living as her authentic self, every step had been a journey of self-discovery and courage. Later that evening, Bonnie stood in front of her mirror, smoothing down the fabric of a new dress she'd bought. The woman who looked back at her was confident, happy, and wholly herself. She thought back to that day in her office when she'd first tried on the corset, how it had felt like coming home to herself. With a smile, Bonnie realized that while the corset had been the catalyst, the real transformation had come from within. She had always been Bonnie, deep down. It had just taken time, courage, and self-acceptance to let her true self shine. As she prepared for bed, Bonnie felt a deep sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys, but she would face them as her authentic self. And that, she knew, made all the difference in the world. The next morning, Bonnie woke up feeling refreshed and energized. She went through her morning routine with a spring in her step, carefully applying her makeup and selecting a professional yet stylish outfit for work. As she sipped her coffee, she scrolled through her phone, smiling at the supportive messages from friends in her support group. At the office, Bonnie greeted her coworkers with a warm smile. She noticed that most of them had become much more comfortable around her in recent weeks. Even Steve, who had initially been awkward and distant, now treated her with the same casual friendliness he showed everyone else. As she settled into her desk, Bonnie's eyes fell on a framed photo she'd recently added. It showed her with Maria and a group of friends from her support group, all laughing at a picnic in the park. The joy on her face was unmistakable. She touched the frame gently, grateful for the people who had stood by her through her journey. Midway through the morning, Mr. Hendricks stopped by her desk.
"Bonnie, do you have a moment? I'd like to discuss something with you in my office."
Bonnie felt a flicker of nervousness but pushed it aside. She'd learned to trust that her boss had her best interests at heart. "Of course, sir. I'll be right there." In Mr. Hendricks's office, he gestured for her to take a seat.
"Bonnie, I wanted to let you know that your work has been exemplary these past few months. In fact, I've noticed a marked improvement in your performance and attitude since your transition."
Bonnie felt a warm glow of pride. "Thank you, sir. I feel like I can finally bring my whole self to work, and it's made a world of difference." Mr. Hendricks nodded.
"That's evident, which is why I'd like to offer you a promotion. We have an opening for a senior accountant position, and I think you'd be perfect for it."
Bonnie's eyes widened in surprise. "Sir, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for this opportunity."
"You've earned it, Bonnie. Your dedication and positive attitude have not gone unnoticed. Take some time to think it over, and let me know your decision by the end of the week." As Bonnie left Mr. Hendricks's office, she felt like she was walking on air. This promotion was more than just a career advancement. It was validation that she could succeed as her true self. That evening, Bonnie met up with some friends from her support group to share the good news. They gathered at a small, cozy cafe that had become their regular hangout spot. "A promotion? Bonnie, that's fantastic!" exclaimed Rachel, a vivacious redhead who had been one of the first to welcome Bonnie to the group. "I'm so proud of you,"
added Michael, a soft-spoken trans man who had become one of Bonnie's closest friends.
"You've come so far in such a short time."
As they celebrated over lattes and pastries, Bonnie found herself reflecting on her journey. She thought about the scared, confused person she'd been just a year ago, hiding behind Graham's facade. Now, here she was, surrounded by friends who knew and loved her for who she truly was, celebrating a major career milestone. "You know," Bonnie said, "I never could have imagined this a year ago. I was so terrified of losing everything if I came out. But instead, I've gained so much." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "That's because you had the courage to be yourself, hun. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it." As the evening wore on, their conversation drifted to other topics. They discussed upcoming LGBTQ+ events in the city, shared dating stories. Bonnie was still single but open to the idea of a relationship, and made plans for a group outing to a new art exhibition. By the time Bonnie arrived home, she felt a deep sense of contentment. She changed into comfortable pajamas and settled onto her couch with a book, enjoying the quiet evening. Just as she was about to turn in for the night, her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Emma. "Hey, sis. Just wanted to check in. How are you doing?" Bonnie smiled, touched by her sister's thoughtfulness. She typed out a reply, sharing her news about the promotion and filling Emma in on her evening with friends. Emma's response came quickly. "That's wonderful news! I'm so happy for you, Bonnie. You deserve all the good things coming your way. Love you!" As Bonnie got ready for bed, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The person looking back at her was so different from the Graham of a year ago. Her hair had grown out into a flattering bob, softening her features. Her skin had a healthy glow, thanks to the hormone therapy and a new skincare routine. But more than the physical changes, it was the happiness in her eyes that struck her most. Bonnie crawled into bed, feeling grateful for how far she'd come. As she drifted off to sleep, she looked forward to what the future might hold, knowing she would face it as her true, authentic self. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Bonnie as she settled into her new role as senior accountant. The job came with more responsibilities, but she found herself thriving under the challenge. Her attention to detail and analytical skills, always strong, seemed to have sharpened even further now that she was living authentically. One particularly busy afternoon, Bonnie was deeply focused on a complex spreadsheet when a new employee stopped by her desk. The young woman, dressed in a smart navy suit, looked slightly lost. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. "I'm looking for Bonnie. I was told she could help me with some questions about the Henderson account." Bonnie looked up with a warm smile. "That's me. How can I help you?" The woman's eyes widened slightly in recognition, but to her credit, she didn't miss a beat. "Oh, wonderful. I'm Olivia, the new junior accountant. Mr. Hendricks suggested I come to you for guidance." As Bonnie walked Olivia through the intricacies of the Henderson account, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Here she was, not just accepted in her workplace, but respected and looked up to. It was a far cry from the anxiety-ridden days when she'd first considered coming out. After Olivia left, armed with a better understanding of the account and a stack of helpful notes, Bonnie found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed. She remembered the days when she'd hidden in her office, secretly trying on that first corset. Now she was out and proud, mentoring new employees and excelling in her career. That evening, as Bonnie was packing up to leave, Olivia stopped by her desk again. "Bonnie, I just wanted to say thank you again for all your help today," she said. Then, lowering her voice slightly, she added, "And I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you're an inspiration. I'm part of the LGBTQ+ community too, and seeing someone like you in a leadership position here, it means a lot." Bonnie felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, Olivia. That means more to me than you know. If you ever need someone to talk to, my door is always open." Olivia nodded gratefully before heading out. As Bonnie watched her go, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just living her truth for herself anymore. She was paving the way for others, showing that it was possible to be successful and respected while being true to oneself. On her way home, Bonnie decided to take a detour to her favorite boutique. She'd been eyeing a beautiful emerald green dress in the window for weeks, and today felt like the perfect day to treat herself. As she tried on the dress, admiring how it hugged her curves in just the right way, Bonnie thought about how far she'd come in terms of fashion and self-expression. Gone were the days of ill-fitting suits and uncomfortable ties. Now, she reveled in choosing outfits that made her feel beautiful and confident. The saleswoman, a friendly older lady named Dorothy, who had assisted Bonnie many times before, poked her head into the fitting room.
"Oh, Bonnie! That color is stunning on you!"
she exclaimed.
"You simply must get it! I have the perfect pair of shoes to go with it, too!"
Bonnie laughed, enjoying the easy camaraderie she'd developed with Dorothy over the past year. "You're a bad influence on my wallet, Dorothy. But you're right, this dress is too good to pass up." As Dorothy rang up her purchases, she asked, "Any special occasion for this lovely dress?" Bonnie shook her head. "Not really. Just celebrating life, I suppose." Dorothy gave her a knowing smile. "Sometimes those are the best occasions to dress up for, dear." On her way home, dress bag in hand, Bonnie felt a surge of spontaneity. She pulled out her phone and sent a message to her friends' group chat. "Anyone up for dinner tonight? I've got a new dress to show off." Within minutes, she had enthusiastic responses from Maria, Rachel, and Michael. They agreed to meet at their favorite restaurant in an hour. As Bonnie got ready, she thought about how different her social life was now compared to a year ago. Back then, she'd rarely gone out, always making excuses to avoid social situations where she felt uncomfortable in her own skin. Now she had a vibrant circle of friends and a calendar full of plans. At the restaurant, Bonnie's friends showered her with compliments on her new dress. As they settled in with their menus, the conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and the clinking of wine glasses. "So, Bonnie," Maria said during a lull in the conversation, "have you thought about getting back into dating? There's a guy in my yoga class who I think would be perfect for you." Bonnie felt a flutter of nerves at the idea. Dating as a trans woman was still a daunting prospect. "I don't know, Maria. I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet." Rachel reached across the table and patted Bonnie's hand. "No pressure, hun. These things happen in their own time. But when you are ready, you know we'll be here to support you every step of the way." Michael nodded in agreement. "And to thoroughly vet any potential suitors," he added with a wink. Bonnie laughed, feeling a rush of affection for her friends. "What would I do without you all?" As the evening wore on, Bonnie found herself overcome with a sense of contentment. Here she was, surrounded by people who loved and accepted her, wearing a dress that made her feel beautiful, celebrating a life that she had fought hard to claim. Later that night, as Bonnie got ready for bed, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was confident, happy, and wholly herself. She thought back to that first day with the corset, how it had felt like a revelation. With a smile, Bonnie realized that while the corset had been the beginning, it was just a small part of her journey. The real transformation had come from within, from finding the courage to be herself, to demand respect, and to live authentically. As she drifted off to sleep, Bonnie felt a deep sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and joys, but she would face them as her true self. And that, she knew, made all the difference in the world.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!